All right, this is Andy McNeill, and I'm here today talking to John L. Connor Jr., and we're going to talk about farming and various business operations, growing up on a farm. John is the president of Holden Connor Company, amongst many other things. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm doing just fine. I want to get into all the different things you do, but I thought one of the things that was interesting to me about you is how much when I see things about you, that you mention your grandfather. So can you tell me a little bit about him?
Well, as a young man, I grew up, a very young child. I grew up here in Newport and there, and my granddad was very influential in my life. And I was out on the farm with him from about birth till I went to college, through high school, grade school, high school. I'd go out there every chance I got. And so he was very influential in my life.
And did you grow up close to him, like down the street where you got to see him all the time?
He lived about 5 or 6 miles out in the country from where I was. And so every time my mother let me go, I'd go out there, and that's what I was interested in, was farming and hanging out with my granddad stuff and farming.
Were both your grandfathers farmers by chance, or just one?
Well, they both own land, and actually neither one of them were actual row crop farmers. They rented their land out.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yes.
What did they do for a living? They do some other land management, or what were they doing?
Well, my granddad that I was closest to was in the cattle business and the ginning business and landowning business back in the his family settled here in the 1870s, and they acquired land and sawmills and cattle and gins and things of that nature.
So pretty industrious guys, for sure.
Yes.
Well, do you still, is that those original pieces of land still part of the overall company today?
Yes, quite a bit of it is still in the Holden Connor Company. I had some cousins that had part of it that's out, and on both sides of my family.
Because one of the things I think was interesting that I watched in our family, so we've got so my wife's family, part of it is all from Stuttgart, and they're rice farmers down there in Stuttgart and DeWitt. And they've been down there for generations. And, one of the things that was challenging for the family as somebody passed away, and then who was going to take over the farm. And, that sometimes can be a bit challenging. It sounds like you guys got through that pretty well.
Yes, Andy, you're exactly right. And I think that the challenging part going forward is going to be after my generation, you're getting further and further away from people that are tied to agriculture. You had a lot of the people in my age range that came back from their college career or started out farming, and so they're tied to the farms. And quite often their children or cousins or whatever, they went off to the city and got a job somewhere else. So I think that you're going to have a significant amount of land movement in the next few years on consolidation on farms.
I would imagine you'd see that. I told you earlier, we're doing one of the companies that we have. We work with a lot of farmers around the United States. And, for sure, I can see this slow trend to larger farming operations that are, quite frankly, very sophisticated. But they're managing, the significant amount of acreage. Let's say, 10,000 acres, 20,000 acres, especially in certain states like California or Texas. And it seems to me that starting up and I want to be a farmer is a very, very difficult proposition. In terms of buying land, buying equipment, et cetera. But I want to get to that here in a second. I want to know a few more things about you before we do that. I know that you went off to the University of Arkansas.
Yes.
And then came back to the family farm. And then you bought your first farm early 70s?
So, 72, I think it was, yes.
And I'm just curious, back in 72, if you remember, I assume it's a row crop ground we're talking about, you know?
Yes, it was undeveloped row crop. It's 520 acres. It's $325 an acre.
Wow. Okay. And today that would be what, an acre?
Well, I've since graded it, and it's $6,500 to $8,500 an acre, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, that's a massive increase, like over 10x, and so over those years for sure. I don't know. I mean, that's another interesting thing I think about farmland. I think if we were to track 72 to now and just looked at, inflation over that period of time, land's gone up significantly higher than inflation since then. Used to be my guess, running the numbers on that.
Probably so, yes.
And so did you work that farm as a row crop farmer? Or did you own it and lease it out?
No, I did farm it, and then I leveled it, improved it, and got it improved the state of repair it's in today.
Yeah. I'm curious. I noticed on the website when you talk about buying land and improving it, is that I know that when I go visit a farm, I don't really, I'm not skilled enough to know the improvements as it relates to, let's say, irrigation or other things like that. I oftentimes judge farming operations, and this maybe sounds silly, but by how clean their equipment is, what their shops look like, what their barns look like. How can you tell the difference between somebody who is, where's the opportunity to really create improvements on a piece of property?
Well, in our particular area, and in quite a bit of the Delta here, over the last 40 years, you've had a significant amount of land grading and improvement. Irrigation, back in when we went through that drought in the 80s, we had very little irrigation in East Arkansas. Now we've got a significant amount of irrigation. And my idea had been, after that 1980 drought, was, well, I need to get this land leveled and drained and with all the improvements in it that you need. And then whether I was farming or somebody else was, they'd have an opportunity to make a reasonable living or return on farming that acreage.
Okay. So but by taking the drought out of the equation, you can control the at least that one element in terms of just the hydraulic load on the farm, how much water you put on it.
Yes.
Because you're not running. Were you running center pivots, or are you running just irrigation systems? Because I'm assuming you're doing rice, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Yes, we've got some center pivots. Most, I'd say 75% of our ground is graded, which we've done in the last 40 years, 35, 40 years.
And if your ground's not graded, you just got areas where you're just not going to be able to get water to unless it just rains.
We've got some.
Is that a way to think?
We've got a little bit of dry land. Most of it is got irrigation on it now. Some of it's contoured, and some of it's straight levees on graded land. Most of it's straight levees.
Okay. So do you buy your second farm before 1980, or do you just have the one farm and then you get into the John Deere dealership?
No, we bought all the way through. Every year I've been buying property every year, and probably 70 in 72, 73, 74, 75. Every year I've purchased property pretty much every year since 1970. I got it when I got out of college.
John, if you buy an acre mathematically, so let's say you're buying it for $500 back then, or $600, $700, or whatever the number is and whether you're renting it or you're farming it, do you have to, in order to pay that back, are you doing this with debt where you would borrow money and mortgage that farm and then you pay it off over a period of time? Is that the way that the economics will work in terms of getting it done over, let's say, a 10-year period? Or did you think about it differently? Because I know when I look at land at $6,000 an acre today, and this is not as something that I'm really skilled at, I sometimes think, well, okay, let's just say where corn is today. Boy, it's going to take a while to get that money back.
Oh, yes. I've used a significant amount of leverage through the years, and it has what I've found is it lands about a 2 to 4% cash on cash return.
Okay.
So after I'd bought uh, several acres, I realized that I had to do something different because you can't pay for land just farming it,
Right.
and continue to grow and continue to scale. And so that's when I realized that I had to get into something else, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get in the John Deere business, and then I was able to scale it and grow it. And
how did you do that? I mean, I've been, as I told you a little bit before, I've actually bought dozens and dozens of companies, and so I'm not sure I would have been able to buy it because I don't know how old you are in 1980 when you do this, but pretty young guy, right? And so how did you get yourself into the dealership into a position where you were in, and then bought it outright?
well, the as you're probably well aware of, the 1980s in agriculture were very difficult,
Very difficult.
very similar to what they are now here in 25. The difference is interest rates were different. On the other hand, we didn't have the irrigation back in the 80s. We didn't have crop insurance in the 80s. Today, you've got irrigation and crop insurance, but and you don't have 20% interest. So I got a chance from a friend of my family's that owned a John Deere store that was going to sell it, to buy the John Deere store from him in 1980, late 87, took over in April 88.
So did he give you a seller note? Did he finance it for you?
No, I just financed it at lending institution.
Got it. Okay.
And
so you get one, and where was the first one?
Newport.
Oh, here in Newport. Okay.
Yes.
And then you've expanded it substantially. And today, is it still 30 something locations?
Yeah, we've been able to close probably eight or nine stores. We had all the territory around a given store, and it made sense to close some of the stores. And so we've consolidated. I think we got 30 open right now.
Okay, got 30. And you're just doing John Deere. You don't have other,
No.
You're not doing Kubota tractors or anything else.
We're John Deere. Nothing runs like a Deere.
Yeah. John Deere's great equipment. I've owned quite a bit of John Deere equipment over the years, and so I didn't go back and look. It's not something that on our teams that I typically am involved in, like where we buy something. But my guess is we've probably bought farm tractors from you.
Well, we got a dealership there in Russellville. We got a dealership.
Yeah, so we for sure have bought tractors from you.
Yes,
then, yeah, because we would use farm tractors to basically hold behind, like what you might think of as like a, like a slinger buggy, which you might call it, to sling out things like biosolids, or we'd run something that subsoil injects things into the soil for beneficial use as fertilizer.
Yes.
So when did you expand into fuel distribution, construction, insurance? How did some of that happen?
Well, a friend of mine, and we had a small fuel company here in Newport called Farmers Oil, and a friend of mine from Mississippi, I'd known him 35 years. He was 84 years old, and he said, "Why don't you come down here and buy this fuel company from me?" And so we went to Itta Bena, and we bought Scott Petroleum, and so that's how we got in the fuel business at the scale we're at now.
I see. Well, and you've done a number of acquisitions, have you not?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because did you guys buy Anderson?
Yeah, we bought Rhonda Anderson out. We have not bought Doug out, but we bought Rhonda.
Well, where I was going with it is it's its own entity that continues to grow and expand, and you just continue to tack on acquisitions where they make sense, I assume.
Yeah, I think, did Matador buy the Ozark Mountain propane?
I'd like to. I haven't done it yet.
Okay, I don't know if they sold that or not.
Yeah, they're working on it, but I've been competing for that, so that I don't have. We've done more in the Texas markets related to propane, but like these markets as well. And when we look at some of the major players, they just they're, at least if I look at like AmeriGas, people like that, they've just sort of have like here in Russell, they have like practically an abandoned building. I'm guessing they just have a driver. Everything's done probably overseas, just be my guess,
right.
In terms of how they distribute and stuff. So it doesn't have a lot of customer touch.
Right.
Yeah. So it creates a little opportunity. Um, did you do the same thing in terms of getting into, like, the HVAC business has been really good too? Is that something where somebody came to you and said, "Hey, buy my business," and then you just expanded it?
Well, uh, about 5 or 6 years ago, we bought a small construction company here in Newport, a 65-year-old company called Frank A. Rogers and Company. And the man that runs that, far as Taylor Maherd, uh, has been trying to expand that Frank A. Rogers and Company. And we bought a couple of bolt-ons there, one being a small construction there in Batesville. And then this HVAC, we bought a couple of those electrical companies that bolted on to the Frank A. Rogers. They're part of Frank A. Rogers. That they run it.
So does your wife ever say to you, "Hey, when are you going to retire?"
No, no.
No, it's impossible. I think I'm the same way, because I listened to one of the things that you said about, hey, I drive past the same farm on Saturday and Sunday with my wife, and I don't know if you still do that,
Every
but
day I was out there yesterday and Saturday both.
I think that's so neat, like, where you can just go sort of see what you've created, because it's got to be a really satisfying feeling for all that you've been able to do in the course of your career. Um, One of the things I didn't tell you is, um, and this will happen today. So I actually am a part-time lecturer at the University of Arkansas in their business school. I teach entrepreneurship and private equity, and um, I actually walk by your picture right before I go to my classroom.
Oh,
So yeah, so right in you're right in the Hall of Fame, and you're right in this. Have you seen your picture up on the wall up there?
no, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So when you walk into the auditorium in Reynolds, it's not an auditorium, the I guess you'd call it I don't even know what you'd call it. When you walk into it, it's got this sort of grand
I've seen,
entrance, and there's all these
yeah, I've seen
pictures.
those. I just hadn't been up there since mine's been. Like,
Well, and where yours is right along the wall, and so I can see yours each time I go to teach my class. So I'm curious, when I part of the what I'm teaching people in this class is not about entrepreneurship, where you have this idea like some .com and then you germinate it and sell it to the world. I think it's great if you can pull that off, but there's so many opportunities with small businesses, especially that are owned by baby boomers, that don't have great exit plans. So part of what I think people can do in terms of entrepreneurship is identify these companies just sort of like you've done, these opportunities, and then build upon that. And so I'm curious, what would you tell students at the University of Arkansas about, how they should think about entrepreneurship, or, what sort of advice would you give them relative to all the things that you've done and how you've gotten it done?
well, I think they got to figure out if they got the vision and if they're willing to put the effort in there and the time and the uh, to what it takes to build a business and grow a business. I tried to teach my kids about SRD: structure, routine, and discipline.
Yeah.
And I read a deal on Van Trump this morning, which in essence was the same thing. It's just consistency and persistence every day. And so you got to figure out. There's no need to start into it if you don't know where you're going. You got to figure out where you're trying to go and what the goal and the objective is. And you don't have to start out with a humongous company. You got to figure out if you can start and build it. And it's just like you bought Izard County Propane. That's a small company.
Right.
And so we'll be competing against each other up there in that area for that market. So you got to figure out. We got to figure out how one of us is going to beat the other one. Is what we're going to have to do.
Right.
So it's all about how much, how bad do you want it and how hard are you willing to work for it. That's what it all gets down to, in my opinion.
Right. Right. Well, certainly hard work, and, maybe even I don't know, would you even say like an appetite for risk? I mean, one of the things I always think sort of interesting is I tell my kids there's nothing like learning when you've got your own capital at risk, because then you can learn very, very quickly. Uh, I don't know if you would agree with that or not,
Well,
but
yes, there's just a whole lot of people that aren't willing to take the risk and put the effort and the time and the work. It's like I heard this podcast that Jerry Jones was on one time with Brent Buck.
Yeah.
There's that guy that gets up every morning. He gets up, he goes to work. His wife does her job. The kids are in boarding school or private school. They go to country club. He's going to get his check on Friday. Everybody's happy, and life goes on. Then there's that guy that got all these businesses. He wakes up Thursday morning, knows he's got a payroll coming on Friday. He has no damn clue how he's going to make the payroll. Just knows he's going to do it.
Just going to do it.
The tolerance.
I know how that feels.
The tolerance for ambiguity.
Yes.
I heard Jerry use that example, and Jerry's probably the most successful guy that's ever graduated from the University of Arkansas. And he's one of the best, if not the best.
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears. I'm curious, this year there's a lot of farms that, you read about going bankrupt in the state of Arkansas. It's, in a quantum, it's not a huge number, but certainly as a percentage on a year-over-year basis, it's pretty substantial. What do you think about that?
I think it's pretty tough out there right now in farming. I think that we're going to have a 10 to 30% loss of producers this year. And I think a lot of them will not know till April, May, June that they're not going to get financed. And so I think it's really important for the lenders to communicate with their customers where they are or aren't going to finance them. Their seed, chemical, fertilizer, fuel companies to communicate that they're not going to finance them again, because that farmer's just hoping he gets that crop loan and get to go again. And I'd say on gap accounting, probably 90% of the people lost money in 24 and 25.
Yeah, that's what I think. I don't know the exact numbers on a per acre basis, but to me, the cost of maybe not fuel, but the cost of equipment, seeds, fertilizer, all continue to go up. Pricing has gone down, and then you throw in weather. I know that our family farm down in Stuttgart has had issues in terms of just worrying about, and worrying's an understatement, about where they really end up. Do you feel like that what they did in the big beautiful bill, made some strides in terms of how they structured the subsidies?
Well, it'll help, but if you take, I think it was 16 we did the farm bill prior to this.
So it's been a while.
They were paying $6.42 a bushel for the subsidy payment on rice. They raised that up to $7.60. If you take a CPI calculator and put 16 in there and 25, it's $8.77. So we didn't keep up with the CPI growth on our pricing. So we're still just barely, $7.60 sounds like a lot if you were used to getting $6.42 on a subsidy basis. So, but you actually took a decrease in the amount of income you're going to get, and these input costs. That's what's got these people in trouble right now. Is these input costs have gone up so much, and I'm talking about the producers really, because as I've had one of my best producers, I've made more yield in 23 and 24 than I've ever made, and I've lost money both years. I'm going to lose money this year, and I'm going to make a really good yield. With irrigation, you make the yield.
Yeah, you can't. It's not like you can yield your way out of this problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the yield's been pretty good. I sort of, I look at it too in the sense that the farming as an industry sector in the state of Arkansas is pretty doggone important. Depending on how you count farming, I often think about the GDP in Arkansas around $150 billion, which, by the way, is less than everybody else around us. But farming, depending on what you count, is like 8 to 25 billion, so that, as a percentage, it's pretty substantial to the state.
Yeah.
And so, it seems like to me that if we have a lot of farmers just hurting, that's going to, it's going to be interesting how that impacts the politics of the state, I guess, in terms, because I got to imagine that a lot of them are going to expect more out of Congress. I don't know if that's true or not, but, is that a Think that's a fair statement?
Well, I think that's the only way to survive is get
Yeah.
some type of government help. But as in the past, that help's been pretty late, and that's the reason I said a while ago that they're going to be April, May, June before they know, because they're going to be thinking, well, we're going to get this help, we're going to get this payment. It may come and it may not. You may be July or August before you get help, so you're in there too late. So your input suppliers, they've got to make a decision. Your bank's got to make a decision, and there's going to be a lot of uncertainty out here as we go forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so too. And so hopefully, hopefully don't see as many bankruptcies as people are talking about. But, and I think another thing that I think they don't really understand, is really these subsidies as a percentage of the total size of the industry is really small. I mean, I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding from people that don't understand agriculture that there's these really, really big subsidies. In fact, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, but they're actually relative to your total income pretty small. And I would evidence this by saying that if you were to look at what I quoted before, just the total GDP of farms, the total revenue created, relative to the subsidies. And so, Arkansas Business puts out a list of all the largest subsidy receivers. If you add just all that up, it's just not that much in terms of subsidies compared to the revenue. Would you agree with that as well?
Well, I think they've got that distorted in the way they present it also. And what's happened is we've moved out of the family farm, the 160 to 300 acres a guy farming, or 500 or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, you're up to most of my producers that I've got rented out to are farming somewhere between 5, 6, 8, 10, up to 15 or 20,000. Well, the way the rules are, they've got to have 3, 5, 7, 10, 15 different entities, and then they cap them out, and their expenses are very similar to what that 800-acre farmer is, but they're not able to capture all the government money because they limit out on what the payment limits are, the top cap on the program. So
I didn't know that. Okay.
So they're actually penalizing that guy because he's a bigger operator. And
I did not know that. So you cap out at a certain spot. So the way that you would do this is just set up multiple farms so you don't cap out.
Well, it's difficult to set up a whole lot of different entities.
Do you also view that part of the issue that Arkansas farmers are going to have is just the mix of what goes out from export? I mean, as I understand it, ag in the U.S. is about 75% domestically used and 25% exported. But here in Arkansas, just for what the crops that we produce, rice, cotton, corn, that we're more exposed to the exports. You probably know more of that about than I do. Is that another risk that we've got?
Yes. We're here in Arkansas. We're exporting virtually all the crops we produce, because we only get 3 million people in the state. So
right.
So a friend of mine's got a big rice company, and he says they're just basically getting no orders for rice sales at this point in time. I mean, a friend of mine quoted there was quoted riceland at $4.70 this past week, minus drying and any discounts on milling. You're talking about $4.25 or 30 cents for a bushel of rice, and those numbers just will not work. They're in a $200-300 loss per acre.
And do you view that some of this is just global politics, in the sense that I'm China, I'm not buying from you, I'm going to go to Brazil because you did something with the tariff?
Well, I think that's part of it. And like I said, the inputs are a big part of it. They've just gone up so much. I don't have a percentage in mind, but your inputs are so high, and what you're getting on these prices are just low.
Yeah. So if you're going to talk to, Crawford or Cotton or Bozeman and, Westerman, Womack or French, what would you tell them? Like, hey, this is what you should be doing on the farm bills going forward.
Well, I did talk to Bozeman just a few days ago.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, you're in a surplus situation on these crops. And I said, then it appears today that we've lost a lot of our export business.
Right.
I said, one of the things that happened, we were in an area in a county that had a significant amount of rain this spring. I mean,
Right.
a lot. And so the people that had crop insurance had what they call PP, prevented plant, and they wind up uh, paying these people to prevent plant, which cut the acres down some on plant. I said, whether it's through crop insurance or whether it's through some amendment to the farm bill or whatever, I said, and we had this back a few years ago where they directly or indirectly subsidize you through government not to plant a certain amount of acres.
Right.
If you take a certain amount of acres out of production till they can get the export business built back up, that may help on the price. But in my opinion, the American producer will just continue to overproduce on yields. Just like I said, this guy at Farm said, I made better yields in 23, 24 than I will in 25 than I've ever made in my life. Genetics are better. You're making more yields. You just still can't make money.
Yeah, I'm selling the widget for a loss. So I made more of them, but I'm losing more money.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Well, I hopefully that hopefully listen to you. I mean, I'm sure John's trying to do everything he possibly can.
Yeah.
They don't seem to get, like it's difficult to get everybody on the same page up there in Washington. It seems like to me, there's just, but maybe since they control the House and the Senate, they can do something.
Well, at this point, they got control of the House and Senate. The Republicans do. So,
right.
Whether or not they do something or not, I don't know. But I think they're going to. I think the president announced some additional money yesterday before, and I hadn't seen the outcome exactly what they're proposing.
Yeah, be interesting to see. John, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you talking to me about all your experiences in your life and just, what you think about the state of farming. And, and I look forward to meeting you in person.